Chapter 1. The Bruise Beneath the Candlelight. The candles in Lord Cassian Thorne's study burned lower than they should have. Elena noticed this as she moved through the room with practiced silence, gathering the empty wine glasses that smelled faintly of iron and something darker. The Lord himself sat at his desk, a figure carved from shadow and expensive tailoring, his pen scratching across parchment with inhuman precision. He never looked up when she entered. He never looked up at all. She preferred it that way. The household staff whispered about Lord Thorne in the servants' quarters, how he arrived 5 years ago and bought the crumbling Ravenswood estate for a sum that made the village council weep with gratitude. How he hosted no parties, entertained no guests, and was seen only at night, conducting business with merchants who arrived in sealed carriages and left looking pale. How his previous housekeepers had all resigned within months, citing his peculiar requirements and unsettling disposition. Elena had lasted 8 months. A record, according to Mrs. Barrow, the cook who came only during the day and left meals in warming boxes that were always empty by morning, though no one ever saw Lord Thorne eat. She reached for the crystal decanter on the side table, and her sleeve rode up. "Just an inch. Just enough. Stop." His voice cut through the quiet like a blade through silk. Elena froze, her heart lurching against her ribs. In 8 months, Lord Thorne had spoken to her perhaps a dozen times, always brief commands. Close the shutters before dawn. Burn the letters in the blue envelopes. Tell no one what you see in this house. She had obeyed without question. She needed this position, needed the room in the east wing that locked from the inside, needed the distance from the village, from Thomas Brennan and his wandering hands, and the magistrate who'd ruled that a broken engagement was no excuse for a woman's hysteria. "My lord?" Her voice came out steady, which felt like a small miracle. "Your wrist." She looked down. The bruise bloomed purple-black against her pale skin. A perfect impression of fingers, 4 days old, from when Thomas had cornered her at the market, insisting she return his mother's ring, as if she'd ever wanted the cursed thing. She'd dropped her basket in the struggle. No one had helped her pick up the spilled apples. Elena tugged her sleeve down quickly. "It's nothing, my lord." Clumsy with the firewood. The scratching of his pen stopped. Lord Thorne set down his quill with deliberate care. When he stood, the movement was too smooth, too fluid, like water taking shape. He was tall, she'd known that, but she'd never stood this close while he was looking directly at her. His eyes were the color of smoke before a storm, and they held an intensity that made her breath catch. "Come here." It wasn't a request. Elena's feet moved before her mind could catch up, carrying her across the Persian rug to stand before his desk. This close, she noticed things she'd trained herself to ignore. How his skin held no warmth when she passed him in doorways. How his chest never seemed to rise and fall. How the silver letter opener on his desk bore a crest she'd seen in the village's oldest church, from a family that died out 2 centuries ago. "Show me." Her fingers trembled as she rolled back her sleeve. The bruise looked worse in the candlelight, angry and deliberate. She kept her eyes on the floor, counting the threads in the carpet. Lord Thorne said nothing for a long moment. When she risked a glance up, his expression was unreadable, but his jaw had tightened in a way that suggested violence held carefully in check. "Who?" The word was soft, dangerous. "It doesn't matter, my lord." "It matters to me." Something in his tone made her look up fully. His eyes had darkened, and she had the unsettling impression of depths she couldn't fathom, of something vast and cold and patient stirring beneath still water. "Thomas Brennan," she heard herself say. "My former fiancé. He believes I owe him something. And do you?" "No." The word came out fierce, surprising them both. The corner of Lord Thorne's mouth lifted. Not quite a smile, but close. "Good. That saves me the trouble of asking." He moved to the window, pulling back the heavy curtain to look out at the night-dark grounds. "You will not return to the village without an escort. There are protocols for this sort of thing." Elena blinked. "Protocols, my lord?" "Ancient ones." He turned back to her, and in the candlelight, she could have sworn his eyes reflected the flame like an animal's. "You are under the protection of this house. That comes with certain guarantees. Mr. Brennan will not trouble you again." "I don't understand. You're not meant to." His gaze softened slightly, which somehow made him more unsettling. "But you're safe here, Elena. Safer than you know. The question is whether you'll trust that, or whether you'll run like the others when you discover what I am." Her pulse hammered in her throat. She should excuse herself, should back away, should remember all the whispered warnings about the Lord who never saw daylight, who kept his windows shuttered and his business dark. Instead, she asked, "What are you?" Lord Thorne smiled then, and it was a terrible, beautiful thing. His teeth were very white in the shadows. "Patient," he said softly. "I am very, very patient. Now go, rest. In the morning you'll find a new set of duties on your desk. And Elena?" He waited until she met his eyes. "Don't hide the bruises. Not in my house. Not from me." She fled. But as she climbed the stairs to her small, safe room, she realized her hands had stopped shaking. And when she locked the door behind her, for the first time in months, she felt something other than fear. She felt seen. Chapter 2. The morning. After Elena woke to sunlight streaming through her window, real sunlight, not the pale gray dawn she'd grown accustomed to in the village. For a moment she lay still, listening to the birdsong outside and the distant sound of Mrs. Barrow clattering in the kitchen below. Everything felt normal, ordinary. Then she remembered Lord Thorne's smile in the candlelight, the way his eyes had gleamed, and the careful precision with which he'd said, "Don't hide the bruises." "Not from me." She sat up, pushing back the quilts. On her nightstand sat a folded piece of parchment that hadn't been there when she'd fallen asleep. Her door was still locked from the inside. Her window, 3 stories up, remained firmly shut. Elena's hands trembled as she unfolded the note. The handwriting was elegant, each letter formed with architectural precision. "Your new duties begin at sunset. Until then, the house is yours to explore. The library is on the 2nd floor, west wing. No room is forbidden to you except the cellar and my private chambers. Mrs. Barrow has been instructed to prepare whatever meals you desire. The village magistrate will receive a visit today regarding Mr. Brennan's behavior. I have made certain arrangements. Do not be afraid of me, Elena. Be afraid of what I'll do to anyone who harms you. C.T." She read it 3 times, her heart doing complicated things in her chest. The note should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like a shield being placed between her and the world that had failed to protect her. She dressed quickly, concealing the bruise out of habit before remembering his words. With deliberate care, she rolled her sleeves to her elbows, leaving the marks visible, a small rebellion, a test perhaps of whether she believed what he'd said. The house was different in daylight. The shadows that made it gothic and forbidding at night receded to reveal beauty. Crown molding carved with ivy patterns. Stained glass windows that threw jeweled light across marble floors. Paintings of landscapes that no longer existed. Everything was immaculately maintained but felt frozen, as if waiting for something to breathe life back into it. She found Mrs. Barrow in the kitchen, kneading bread with flour-dusted hands. The older woman looked up and smiled, though her eyes caught on Elena's wrist and darkened with knowing sympathy. "Tea's on, love. And the master left instructions you're to have a proper breakfast. Eggs, toast. I've fresh strawberry preserves." "The master left instructions?" Elena slid onto the stool by the work table. "When?" "He never comes down here." Mrs. Barrow's hands never stopped working the dough. "Left a note same as he does every morning. Tacked to the message board before I arrive at dawn." She paused, giving Elena a long look. "Though he's never mentioned the staff's meals before. You must have made an impression." Elena accepted the tea, wrapping her hands around the warm cup. "Mrs. Barrow, what do you know about Lord Thorne?" The older woman's expression shuddered. "I know he pays triple wages and asks only that we keep his schedule and mind our own business. I know this estate was falling to ruins before he came, and now it's the finest house in 3 counties. I know." She stopped, seemed to wrestle with something, then continued quietly. "I know my grandson was sick with fever last winter. The doctor said there was nothing to be done. Then Lord Thorne sent a physician from the city. Didn't ask for coin, didn't ask for thanks. My Charlie lived. That's kind of him. Kind, Mrs. Barrow repeated, as if tasting the word. That's not the word most use, but yes, in his way. She shaped the dough into loaves with practiced efficiency. He's particular about who he keeps on staff. The last 3 housekeepers couldn't abide his hours, or the silence, or the way he is. But you, her eyes sharpened. You don't seem afraid. Should I be? That's not for me to say, love. But I'll tell you this. In 5 years, I've never known him to be cruel. Strange, yes. Secretive, absolutely, but not cruel. She wiped her hands on her apron. Now eat. He wants you ready by sunset, which means you've got time to explore like his note said. Library's lovely this time of day. Elena did as she was told, though the food sat heavy in her stomach. After breakfast, she climbed the stairs to the 2nd floor, following the westward corridor until she found the double doors Mrs. Barrow had mentioned. The library stole her breath. Floor-to-ceiling shelves lined 3 walls, stuffed with leather-bound volumes in languages she recognized, and several she didn't. A massive fireplace dominated the 4th wall, cold now but clearly used regularly, given the ash in the grate. Deep armchairs flanked it, and a desk sat near the window, a smaller, more intimate space than Lord Thorne's imposing study. She moved along the shelves, trailing her fingers over spines. History, philosophy, poetry. Medical texts from the 1600s sat beside modern novels. A collection of journals, handwritten, filled an entire shelf. She pulled one down at random, opened it carefully. June 1847. The transition is complete. I no longer remember what sunlight feels like on my skin, only that I miss it the way one misses a language learned in childhood and long forgotten. Elena slammed the journal shut, her heart racing. 1847. That was nearly 200 years ago. The handwriting was identical to the note on her nightstand. She should have put it back, should have left the library, packed her few belongings, and walked away from Ravenswood Estate before sunset. Before whatever Lord Thorne was, because he was clearly not human, revealed itself fully. Instead, she pulled down another journal. And another, reading in fragments, piecing together a story of a man who'd once been mortal, who'd been offered a choice he couldn't refuse, who'd watched everyone he'd ever loved grow old and die while he remained unchanged, who'd built walls around himself not from cruelty, but from the simple mathematics of immortal grief. The sun tracked across the floor as she read. She didn't hear the door open, didn't sense the presence behind her until a voice, soft as smoke, said, "You didn't run." Elena turned. Lord Thorne stood in the doorway, still dressed in last night's clothes, looking at her with an expression she couldn't name. In his hand he held a sealed envelope. "No," she said. "I didn't. Why?" She held up the journal. "Because lonely people recognize each other, even across centuries." Something cracked in his careful composure. He moved into the room, and she noticed he cast no shadow in the fading sunlight streaming through the window. He stopped just outside the sun's reach, as if it were a barrier he couldn't cross. "The magistrate has been persuaded to charge Mr. Brennan with assault," he said quietly. "He won't trouble you again." "Thank you. Don't thank me yet." His eyes met hers, and they were darker now, almost black. "You've read enough to know what I am, but not enough to understand what that means for you, if you choose to stay." Elena's throat went dry. "Tell me." Lord Thorne smiled, sad and ancient. "Not yet. First, you need to understand that this house, this estate, it exists between worlds. And there are rules here, Elena. Rules that protect you, but also bind you." "To what?" "To me," he said softly. "And to the war that's coming." Chapter 3. The Rules of Blood and Shadow. Elena's first thought was absurd. War? The word seemed too large for the quiet library, for the afternoon sunlight slanting across Persian rugs, for the man who stood so carefully outside its reach, watching her with eyes that had seen empires fall. "I don't understand," she said, though part of her, the part that had read those journals, that had noticed his lack of reflection in the study's mirror, that had felt the unnatural stillness of his presence, understood perfectly. Lord Thorne moved to the fireplace, keeping to the shadows as if they were old friends. There are 5 great houses that govern our kind. We've maintained an uneasy peace for 3 centuries, bound by accords written in blood and witnessed by powers older than memory. He paused, his fingers trailing along the mantle. That peace is fracturing, and Ravenswood sits on a border that 3 houses want to claim. Your kind, Elena repeated slowly. Vampires. The word hung in the air between them. He didn't flinch from it, didn't soften it with euphemism. Yes, she should have been terrified, should have felt the primal fear of prey recognizing a predator. Instead, she felt strangely calm, as if her body had already accepted what her mind was still processing. The blood in the wine glasses, the way you never eat, how you're never seen during the day. Observant. There was approval in his voice. Most humans train themselves not to notice. It's safer that way. Is that why your housekeepers left? Because they noticed? They left because I let them see too much too quickly. Fear is exhausting to live with. He turned to face her fully. I won't make that mistake with you. You deserve the truth in measured doses. But Elena, you need to understand. By staying here, you've already become entangled in house politics. You're under my protection, which means you're under House Thorne's protection. That makes you valuable. And vulnerable. Elena gripped the journal tighter, using it to anchor herself. What do you mean, valuable? Humans living under a house's protection are rare. Most vampires consider them livestock at worst, servants at best. But the old laws, the ones written when we first walked among you, they're clear. A human who accepts sanctuary from a house must be treated with honor. Fed, sheltered, never harmed, never turned without consent. His jaw tightened. Those laws are inconvenient to some. House Corvus, for instance, considers them antiquated. They've been pushing to renegotiate terms. The implications settled over her like frost. And if they succeed, then humans become property instead of people under protection. His voice went cold, distant. I've spent 2 centuries ensuring that doesn't happen. It's why House Corvus wants this territory, to prove the old laws can be broken. Elena set the journal down with shaking hands. The library suddenly felt smaller, the walls pressing in. Why tell me this? Why not just send me away, keep me safe through ignorance? Lord Thorne crossed to her in 3 silent strides, stopping just close enough that she could see the fine details of him, the way his skin held an impossible smoothness, unmarred by time or sun, the way his eyes carried depths that seemed to pull at something in her chest. Because I'm tired of lying, he said quietly. And because you asked. No one's asked me for truth in 50 years, Elena. They want safety or money or the prestige of working for a house. But you... His hand lifted, hovering near her face before falling back to his side. You looked at my journals and saw loneliness instead of monstrosity. That's rare. She couldn't breathe, couldn't look away. What happens now? Now, I teach you the rules that will keep you alive, and you decide if you can live with them. He stepped back, giving her space, and she felt the loss of his nearness like cold water. Rule 1. You never leave the estate grounds without me or someone I've sworn to House Thorne. The village is no longer safe for you. Thomas is the least of your concerns now. House Corvus has eyes everywhere. If they discover you're here under my protection, they'll test whether I'll uphold the old laws. They'll make you a target to prove a point. Elena wrapped her arms around herself. That's not a rule. That's a prison. That's survival. His tone gentled. I won't lie to you, Elena. This life, proximity to my world, it comes with costs. But it also comes with protections. No one will harm you here. No magistrate will dismiss your claims. No man will dare raise his hand to you. Because they're afraid of you. Yes. no apology in the word. Is that so terrible? She thought of Thomas's fingers digging into her wrist, the magistrate's condescending smile, the village women who'd whispered that she must have done something to deserve a broken engagement. No, she admitted. It's not. Something shifted in his expression. Relief, perhaps, or vindication. Rule 2. You don't discuss house business with anyone outside these walls. What you learn here, what you see, dies with you or lives only in silence. I understand. Rule 3. He hesitated, and for the first time he looked uncertain, vulnerable. You tell me immediately if you feel afraid. Of me, of this house, of anything. I need to know if I'm... He trailed off, searching for words. If I'm becoming what I've spent centuries trying not to be. The confession struck her harder than any revelation about vampires or houses or ancient wars. She stepped closer, drawn by the raw honesty in his voice. What's that? A monster who keeps people through fear instead of choice. Elena studied his face. The sharp angles, the severe beauty, the eyes that held centuries of carefully maintained control. She thought about the note on her nightstand, the physician sent for Mrs. Barrow's grandson, the way he'd looked at her bruises with barely contained rage. You're not that, she said firmly. Monsters don't ask permission. They don't care if people are afraid. Some monsters are very good at pretending they care. Then I'll have to trust my instincts. She held out her hand, formal, deliberate. You want my consent to stay? You have it. Teach me your rules. Show me your world. But Cassian... The use of his name surprised them both. Don't treat me like I'm fragile. I've survived worse than truth. He stared at her outstretched hand for a long moment. When he took it, his skin was cool, solid, real. His grip was gentle despite the strength she sensed coiled beneath it. Then we begin at sunset, he said. I'll show you what you've bound yourself to. As the sun dipped below the horizon and shadows claimed the library, Elena realized she wasn't afraid. She was awake, truly awake, for the first time in months, and she had no intention of going back to sleep. Chapter 4. Threads of the Forgotten Sunset, Transformed Ravenswood. Elena noticed it the moment the last rays disappeared behind the distant hills, how the house seemed to exhale, how shadows deepened into something alive, how the very air shifted from the drowsy warmth of afternoon to something electric and aware, and Cassian changed with it. The careful stillness that made him seem like a portrait come to life dissolved. He moved with fluid grace, no longer hiding the inhuman smoothness of his gestures. His eyes brightened, reflecting the lamplight with that unsettling animal gleam. He looked less like a man playing at mortality, and more like exactly what he was, a predator in his element. You're staring, he said without looking at her, a hint of amusement in his voice. Elena didn't deny it. They were in his study now, the room she'd cleaned 100 times but never truly seen. At night, lit by candles and the low fire in the hearth, it revealed itself as something more intimate, a sanctuary filled with personal touches she'd overlooked in daylight. Books marked with ribbons, a chessboard mid-game against an absent opponent, a violin case in the corner, well-worn. You're different at night, she observed. I'm myself at night. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. During the day, what's left of me sleeps. Not like human sleep. More like death practicing for the real thing. She settled into the chair, watching as he poured 2 glasses of wine. Real wine this time, she noted, not the iron-scented liquid from before. Does it hurt? The day sleep? He considered the question, handing her a glass. No, but I dream sometimes. Of sunlight, of warmth on my skin, of standing in a field without fear of burning. His expression turned distant. Those dreams hurt more than any physical pain could. Elena sipped the wine, letting the comfortable silence stretch between them. It felt natural sitting here with him, as if they'd done this 1,000 times before, in lives neither remembered. "You said you'd show me your world," she said finally. "I'm ready." Cassian's eyes met hers, searching for something. Doubt, perhaps, or the first signs of fear taking root. Whatever he found seemed to satisfy him. "Then let me show you what it means to be bound to House Thorn." He stood, moving to a cabinet hidden behind a false panel in the bookshelf. When he returned, he carried a wooden box inlaid with silver. The crest matched the one on his letter opener, a thorn-wrapped tower beneath a moonless sky. Every house has its relics, objects that carry our history, our oaths, our power. He opened the box. Inside, cushioned on black velvet, lay a silver dagger, a crystal vial, and a piece of parchment so old it seemed ready to crumble. "This is the Accord of 1723, the treaty that ended the last great war between our kind." Elena leaned closer, squinting at the faded ink. The language was Latin, the handwriting elaborate. But what caught her attention were the signatures at the bottom, written in what looked like rust-red ink. "Blood," Cassian confirmed, following her gaze. 5 houses. 5 signatures? Mine is there. Cassian Thorn, first of his line, keeper of the borderlands. He traced the signature with one finger, not quite touching the parchment. "I was 32 when I signed this. Human years, I mean. I'd been turned for 5 years, still young enough to remember what it felt like to be mortal." "What did you give up?" The question slipped out before Elena could stop it. His hand stilled. "Everything. My family believed me dead. It was easier than the truth. My betrothed married my cousin within the year. I watched from the shadows as they raised children, as my parents were buried, as the life I should have lived continued without me." He closed the box with deliberate care. The treaty bought peace, but the cost was isolation. No house could maintain large territories. No vampire could turn humans without consent and witnesses. No feeding without permission. We became ghosts in our own world. But you saved human lives. Did I? His laugh was bitter. Or did I just make us better at hiding? House Corvus still hunts in the old ways. They're just more careful about it. House Sable trades in blood debts that trap humans in service for generations. The peace I helped build has cracks, Elena, and I'm not sure it's worth preserving anymore. The vulnerability in his admission made her chest ache. She stood, moving around the desk until she was close enough to touch him. "Then why do you keep fighting for it?" "Because the alternative is worse." He looked at her then, really looked, and she saw the weight of 2 centuries in his eyes. "Without the Accord, we return to the old ways. Humans become cattle. Cities become hunting grounds. The careful balance we've maintained, the illusion that we're just stories, just myths, it shatters. And when that happens, both our kinds lose." Elena reached out slowly, giving him time to pull away. When he didn't, she placed her hand over his where it rested on the desk. His skin was cool, but not unpleasantly so. Solid. Real. "You're not alone in this anymore," she said quietly. "Whatever's coming, this war between houses, I'm here. I choose to be here." Cassian's breath hitched, though she knew he didn't need to breathe. His hand turned under hers, fingers intertwining with a gentleness that contradicted his supernatural strength. "You don't understand what you're offering. Then tell me." He pulled her closer, not forcefully, but with a question in the gesture. She came willingly, until they stood barely a hand's breadth apart. This close, she could see the fine silver threads in his dark hair, the slight point to his canines that she'd mistaken for normal teeth, the way his pupils dilated as he looked at her. When a human binds themselves to a house, they become part of its strength. Their loyalty, their presence, it feeds the oaths that hold us together. But it also makes them a target. House Corvus won't just attack me to gain this territory. They'll attack you. They'll try to break you, to prove that the old laws are meaningless. Let them try. The words came out fiercer than she intended. His free hand lifted to her face, thumb brushing across her cheekbone with aching tenderness. "You were hurt by one mortal man and it enraged me. If a vampire harms you, if I'm too late to stop it." His jaw clenched. "I don't know if I could maintain the restraint the Accord demands." "Maybe," Elena whispered. "Restraint is overrated." Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. something hungry, but he stepped back, releasing her hand with visible reluctance. It's late. You should rest. Tomorrow night I'll introduce you to the others. Others? House Thorn isn't just me, Elena. There are 3 others sworn to my banner. Vampires who've chosen to uphold the old laws. You'll need to know them. Trust them. He moved to the door, opening it. And you'll need to understand that once they know about you, there's no going back. You'll be bound to all of us. She should have been frightened, should have retreated. Instead, she asked, will you be there when I meet them? Every moment, a promise and a vow. I won't let you face this alone. Elena nodded and moved toward the door. As she passed him, she paused. Cassian, thank you for trusting me with the truth. His hand caught hers briefly, squeezed once. Thank you for not running from it. She climbed the stairs to her room, her mind spinning with everything she'd learned. As she prepared for bed, she caught sight of her reflection in the mirror, face flushed, eyes bright, alive in a way she hadn't felt in years. Dangerous, perhaps, but alive. Chapter 5. The Court of Thorns. Elena spent the following day in a state of restless anticipation. Mrs. Barrow noticed, commenting with a knowing smile that the master seemed to have plans for the evening, based on the instructions he'd left. The kitchen was to prepare refreshments for guests. Not food, but wines from the cellar's locked section, the bottles Elena had learned not to question. As sunset approached, she changed into the only formal dress she owned, a deep burgundy gown salvaged from her former life. When she'd believed she would be a magistrate's wife, it felt like armor now, a reminder of the woman she'd been and the one she was becoming. Cassian was waiting for her at the bottom of the grand staircase. He'd changed as well, trading his usual severe black for a tailored coat of midnight blue, his hair pulled back to reveal the sharp architecture of his face. When he looked up at her descent, something flickered in his expression. Approval. Or perhaps something deeper. You look... He paused, seeming to search for a word that wouldn't cross an invisible line between them. Formidable. Is that what I'll need to be tonight? Tonight, you need to be yourself. But it helps if they see your strength immediately. He offered his arm, and she took it, feeling the cool solidity of him through the fabric. They're waiting in the east drawing room. I should warn you, they're curious about you. Intensely so. No human has accepted sanctuary with House Thorn in 70 years. Her stomach tightened. Why so long? Because I stopped offering it. After... He hesitated as they walked through the candlelit corridors. After the last one died protecting me from House Corvus assassins. Her name was Margaret. She was brave and foolish, and I couldn't save her. His voice went flat. I vowed never to put another human in that position. Elena's hand tightened on his arm. What changed? You did. He stopped outside a set of double doors, turning to face her. You were already in danger the moment Brennan marked you as his. The moment the village turned its back on you. At least here you have teeth. His lips curved slightly. Well, my teeth. But you understand the metaphor. Before she could respond, he pushed open the doors. The drawing room was magnificent. All dark wood and emerald velvet, lit by a chandelier that cast dancing shadows across the walls. 3 figures stood as they entered, and Elena's breath caught. The woman was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. Pale skin like porcelain, hair the color of spilled ink, eyes that glowed amber in the candlelight. She wore a gown that seemed woven from shadows, and when she smiled, her canines were delicately, unmistakably pointed. So, this is the mortal, she said, her voice like honey over steel. She's lovelier than you described, Cassian. Lysandra. Cassian's tone carried a warning. Behave. The woman, Lysandra, laughed, a sound like wind chimes. I always behave. It's half my charm. She glided forward, circling Elena with predatory grace. I'm Lysandra Thorn, though I was born Lysandra Ashford in 1804. I've been sworn to this house for 90 years. I hunt those who break the accord, and I'm delighted to meet someone who makes our Lord actually smile. I don't... Elena started. You do, interrupted the second figure, a man who looked barely 20 with copper hair and a sardonic expression. He's been different since you arrived. More present. I'm Adrian. Turned 1923, sworn here for 40 years. I manage the house's financial interests and occasionally kill people who deserve it. He raised a glass in mock salute. Welcome to the madness. The third vampire said nothing, simply watching Elena with dark, steady eyes. He was older than the others in appearance, perhaps 50 when turned, with silver threading through his black hair and the bearing of a soldier. Something about him reminded her of ancient stone, immovable and patient. Marcus, Cassian said quietly. My second. My oldest friend. Turned in 1702. He doesn't speak much, but when he does, we listen. Marcus inclined his head to Elena, a gesture of respect that surprised her. Then he spoke, his voice deep and measured. You honor us by accepting our protection. We will not fail you as we failed Margaret. The name hung in the air, heavy with grief and guilt. Elena felt the weight of their loss, saw it reflected in Cassian's tightened jaw, in Lysandra's dimmed smile, in Adrian's suddenly serious expression. Tell me about her, Elena said, and all 4 vampires turned to stare. If I'm following in her footsteps, I should know who she was. Lysandra's laugh was softer this time, almost affectionate. Oh, I like her. Cassian guided Elena to a settee, and the others arranged themselves around the room. Lysandra draped across a chaise, Adrian perched on the window seat, Marcus standing like a sentinel by the fireplace. They looked like a painting, Elena thought. Beautiful, timeless, and utterly removed from human concerns, until Cassian began to speak. Margaret was a governess. She came to Ravenswood to teach the local magistrates' children. But he... Cassian's hands clenched. He was House Corvus. Using his position to identify vulnerable humans for sport, Margaret discovered what he was and she ran. She made it to our gates just before dawn, begging for sanctuary. We granted it immediately, Marcus added. The old laws were clear. House Corvus demanded her return, Lysandra continued, examining her nails. Claimed she'd stolen from the magistrate. Lies, of course, but they wanted to test whether we'd actually enforce the protection accords, whether we'd risk war for one human life. Adrian's expression hardened. We chose war. Or we would have. But Margaret... He trailed off, looking to Cassian. She tried to negotiate. Cassian finished, his voice hollow. She believed she could broker peace, spare us the conflict. She met with the Corvus magistrate on neutral ground, under flag of truce. He killed her to prove the old laws were meaningless, that humans were property, not people. His eyes met Elena's, and they were ancient with rage. I burned his house to the ground with him in it. House Corvus has wanted my territory and my head ever since. The room fell silent. Elena processed this, understanding suddenly why Cassian had stopped offering sanctuary, why he'd tried to keep her at arm's length, why her simple presence in his house was an act of defiance. I'm not Margaret, she said finally. I won't try to negotiate with monsters. And I won't leave. Lysandra smiled, all teeth. Definitely keeping her. The question, Marcus rumbled, is whether House Corvus knows she's here yet. As if summoned by the words, a sound split the night, sharp, piercing like metal scraping stone. All 4 vampires went rigid, their heads turning in perfect unison toward the windows. What was that? Elena whispered. Cassian's hand found hers, gripping tight. A challenge horn. House Corvus. His voice dropped to something cold and deadly. They're here. Chapter 6. The Price of Protection. The transformation was instantaneous. One moment, the vampires around Elena were almost human, elegant, restrained, playing at civility. The next, they were something else entirely. Marcus moved to the window. In a blur, Lysandra's posture shifted from languid grace to coiled readiness, and Adrian's sardonic smile vanished, replaced by cold calculation. Cassian never let go of her hand. How many? He asked, his voice carrying absolute authority. Marcus peered through the curtain's edge. 6 that I can see, dressed for ceremony, not immediate violence. They're observing protocol. He paused. For now. Protocol. Lysandra spat the word like poison. How civilized of them, announcing themselves before they come to tear down everything we've built. It means they want to negotiate, Adrian said, already moving toward the door. or at least appear to want it. Make us look unreasonable when we refuse their generous terms. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs, but she forced her voice steady. What do they want? You, Cassian said simply. He turned to face her, and his eyes held that inhuman gleam, predatory and protective in equal measure. They'll claim you're here under false pretenses, that you don't truly understand what sanctuary means. They'll demand we release you to their custody for evaluation. It's a legal loophole. If they can prove you were coerced, your protection is void. But I wasn't coerced. They'll try to make it look like you were. His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand, a gesture so human it jarred against the supernatural tension thrumming through the room. Elena, you need to understand, once I go down there and face them, once they see that you're real and willing and under my protection, this becomes official. House Corvus will have grounds to challenge me formally. War becomes inevitable. She should have been terrified. Part of her was. But a larger part, the part that had survived Thomas's cruelty and the magistrate's dismissal and the village's cold shoulders, felt something else entirely. Defiance. Rage. The fierce satisfaction of finally having someone willing to fight for her. Then let's make it official, she said. Lysandra laughed, delighted. I told you I liked her. The horn sounded again, closer now. Demanding. Cassian's expression softened for just a moment, his free hand rising to cup her cheek. You're certain? Once we walk through that door together, there's no taking it back. You'll be bound to House Thorn in the eyes of all vampire law. Protected, yes, but also claimed. They'll call you my thrall, my pet, my... Yours, Elena interrupted, meeting his gaze without flinching. Let them call me what they want. I know what I am. I'm someone who chooses. And I choose this. I choose you. Something cracked in his carefully maintained control. His forehead touched hers, breath he didn't need ghosting across her skin. Then stay close to me. Don't speak unless I tell you it's safe. And Elena... His voice dropped to barely a whisper. If anything goes wrong, Marcus will get you out. Promise me you'll run if he tells you to. Cassian, promise me. She wanted to argue, to insist she wouldn't abandon him. But the look in his eyes, ancient fear wrapped around desperate hope, stopped her. I promise. He straightened, and the softness vanished, replaced by the cold authority of a man who'd been negotiating with immortal powers for 2 centuries. Marcus, Adrian, flank positions. Lysandra, you're with Elena if they breach the house. No one touches her. Is that understood? 3 voices answered in unison. Yes, my lord. The formality of it sent chills down Elena's spine. This was House Thorn, not a collection of outcasts but a unified force. A family forged in blood and bound by oaths that transcended death. They moved through the corridors like shadows, Cassian leading with Elena's hand still clasped in his. The great entrance hall loomed ahead, its vaulted ceiling lost in darkness. Through the tall windows, Elena could see them, 6 figures arranged in a semicircle on the grounds, illuminated by torches that cast dancing shadows across their faces. The figure at the center stepped forward as Cassian opened the door. He was tall, angular, with hair like fresh snow and eyes that gleamed red in the firelight. His smile was all predator, no pretense of humanity. Lord Thorn, he said, voice carrying across the space between them. How kind of you to receive us without prior appointment. I am Silas Corvus, emissary of House Corvus, here to discuss a matter of mutual concern. There is nothing mutual about our concerns, Silas. Cassian's voice was ice. State your business and be done with it. Silas's gaze shifted to Elena, and she felt the weight of it like a physical thing, assessing, calculating, hungry. We've heard rumors. Whispers that House Thorn has taken a human under protection, that the old laws are being invoked once more. As the accord requires, we've come to verify these claims and ensure all parties understand the implications. The rumors are true. Elena Ashford is under my protection, granted by her free will and witnessed by my house. The old laws stand. You may verify this and leave. Free will. Silas tasted the words like wine. Such a delicate thing, isn't it? Easily influenced by fear, or desperation, or the promise of safety from mortal troubles. His red eyes fixed on Elena. Tell me, Miss Ashford, did Lord Thorne explain what accepting his protection truly means? That you become bound to his service? That you can never leave without his consent? That your blood, your life, your very soul becomes collateral in house politics? Elena felt Cassian tense beside her, felt the warning in his grip. But she also felt something else. The weight of Margaret's memory. The burden of every human who'd been dismissed as property. The rage of every woman told her choices didn't matter. She stepped forward. Don't, Cassian started. But she was already moving, positioning herself directly in Silas's line of sight. He explained everything, she said, her voice ringing clear across the grounds. I know what I am. I know what this means. And I choose it freely. Not from fear, not from desperation, but because Lord Thorne is the first person in my mortal life to treat me as if my choices matter. As if I matter. She lifted her chin, meeting those red eyes without wavering. So yes, I am bound to House Thorne. By choice. By will. And if you want to challenge that, you'll have to go through me first. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Silas smiled, slow and terrible. How wonderfully brave, and how very, very foolish. He raised one pale hand, and the 5 figures behind him shifted, moving into attack positions. House Corvus formally challenges House Thorne's claim. We invoke the right of contest. At the next dark moon, 3 nights from now, we will meet on neutral ground. Winner takes the territory, and the girl. Cassian moved in front of Elena, his body a wall between her and the threat. The challenge is accepted. 3 nights, the old battleground at Blackwood Crossing. Bring your witnesses. Oh, we will. Silas's smile widened. And Lord Thorne? Do try to keep your pet alive until then. It would be such a shame if she met with an accident, before we could properly contest for her. Then they were gone, vanishing into the darkness so quickly Elena almost doubted they'd been real. Cassian stood frozen, his back still to her, his shoulders rigid with barely contained fury. When he finally turned, his eyes were black. No color, no humanity, just ancient rage given form. You should have stayed silent, he said, his voice shaking. You should have stood by and let them treat me like property, like something to be verified and approved. Elena's own anger rose to meet his. I told you not to treat me as fragile. I meant it. His hand shot out, catching her arm, not roughly, but desperately. You've given them exactly what they wanted, a spectacle, a symbol, proof that I care enough about one human to risk everything. His voice cracked. Don't you understand? In 3 nights, they'll try to kill you just to break me. Then we make sure they fail. She placed her hand over his where it gripped her arm. Together. End of chapter 6. Word count. 1,000 words. Would you like me to continue with chapter 7? Retry. Now, generate the next chapter of the story, ensuring smooth continuity from the previous section. Continue the emotional build and suspense, deepen their trust and tension, and keep the pacing steady. Follow the next structural beat from the outline. Write 1,000 words, and strictly follow word count, and naturally lead into the next chapter. Chapter 7. Blood Oaths and Battle Plans. The Council of War began immediately. They reconvened in Cassian's private study. The the one room in Ravenswood that Elena had been forbidden to enter until tonight. Now she understood why. The walls were covered in maps, not of the estate or the surrounding countryside, but of territories marked with symbols she didn't recognize. Vampire holdings, she realized, the borders of immortal kingdoms invisible to human eyes. 3 nights, Adrian said, pacing before the fireplace. Not enough time to call in reinforcements from allied houses. He planned this deliberately. Of course he did. Lysandra sprawled in a chair, but her casual posture didn't hide the tension coiled in her frame. Silas is many things, but he's not stupid. He knows our strength lies in our alliances. Cut us off from support, make it a direct challenge between houses, and we're outnumbered 6-4. 6-5, Elena corrected quietly. All 4 vampires turned to stare at her. Absolutely not, Cassian said, his voice leaving no room for argument. You will be nowhere near Blackwood Crossing when this happens. Then you've already lost. Elena moved to the desk, studying the maps. They challenge for me, Cassian. If I'm not there, if I hide while you fight for my right to choose, what does that prove? That I'm too weak to stand by my own decisions? That human protection is just another word for possession? She turned to face him. They want to make me a prize. I won't give them that satisfaction. Marcus spoke from his position by the door, his deep voice thoughtful. She's right. If the girl doesn't appear at the contest, House Corvus can claim she's being held against her will, that our protection is a sham. They win by default. Then we bring her but keep her behind wards, Cassian argued. Protected. Safe. No. Elena's voice was firm. I stand with you. Visible. Present. Making it clear that I choose House Thorn. Anything less, and we're playing their game. Cassian's hands clenched into fists on the desk. Do you understand what you're suggesting? The right of contest isn't a formal duel. It's sanctioned violence. Vampires fight without restraint, and any human caught in the crossfire is considered acceptable losses. Then teach me not to be caught. She held his gaze, refusing to back down. You have 3 nights. Teach me your world's rules. Teach me how to survive it. A long silence stretched between them, weighted with everything unsaid. Finally, Lysandra broke it with a low whistle. I'm starting to see why Margaret tried to negotiate. You Thorn humans have a fatal flaw. You're all criminally brave. Bravery and stupidity are separated by success, Adrian muttered, but there was grudging respect in his tone. Marcus moved to the desk, pulling out a leather-bound tome that looked older than anything Elena had ever seen. If she's to stand with us, she needs to understand the formal rules of contest. House law, blood law, what's permitted, what isn't, and what happens when someone breaks the rules anyway. There are no rules once violence begins, Cassian said bitterly. But there are before, Marcus countered, and after, and Elena needs to know them. He opened the tome, revealing pages covered in elaborate script. Some of it looked like Latin, some looked like no language Elena had ever seen. The right of contest was established in the Accord specifically to prevent all-out war. 2 houses with a territorial dispute choose champions. They fight on neutral ground under witness of unaffiliated houses. The winner claims the territory. The loser withdraws. Withdraws, Elena repeated. That's all? They just leave? If they honor the old ways, yes. Lysandra's expression turned dark. But House Corvus has been pushing boundaries for decades, testing how far they can bend the rules before they break entirely. Which is why, Cassian said, his voice heavy, we have to assume they'll try to kill Elena regardless of the contest's outcome. If I win, she's an embarrassment, proof that the old laws still hold power. If they win, he couldn't finish the sentence. If they win, I become leverage. Elena understood perfectly. Proof that humans are possessions to be traded. Not if we win decisively, Adrian said, leaning against the bookshelf. Not if we make such a spectacle of upholding the old laws that other houses have to take notice. House Corvus might be bold, but they're not suicidal. If we can rally enough support, if we can make this about more than just one territory and one human, then we turn their challenge into a referendum on the Accord itself. Marcus nodded slowly. Make them defend why they want to overturn protections that have kept peace for centuries. Cassian's expression shifted from despair to calculation. The neutral witnesses. We can choose who's invited to observe the contest. Exactly. Adrian's smile turned sharp. And I know several houses who've been looking for an excuse to put House Corvus in check. They're too aggressive, too ambitious. If we frame this right, we make Silas defend his entire political position in front of his rivals. Lysandra sat up, energized. Oh, that's delicious. He challenged us thinking it would be a quick victory. Instead, we turn it into a trial. Elena listened to them strategize, watched the way they moved from despair to determination, and felt something fierce bloom in her chest. This was House Thorn, not just warriors but tacticians. Not just predators but protectors of a peace they'd fought centuries to maintain. What do I need to know? She asked, drawing their attention back to her. What are the rules that might keep me alive? Cassian moved around the desk, and this time when he looked at her, some of the fear had left his eyes. First rule, neutral ground is sacred. No one can attack before the formal challenge begins, or they forfeit automatically and face sanction from all houses. Second rule, Marcus continued, witnesses are inviolate. If an unaffiliated vampire agrees to witness, they cannot be harmed or influenced. Their testimony is binding. Third rule, Lysandra added with a feral smile, is that humans under formal protection can call for single combat if they believe their protector isn't defending their honor adequately. It's an old provision that almost no one remembers. Elena blinked. You mean I could challenge Silas myself? Don't even think about it, Cassian said immediately. That's a technicality, not a real option. A human against a vampire in single combat is suicide. Unless, Adrian said slowly, the human is clever enough to make the vampire look worse by winning. The humiliation alone would destroy Silas's standing. He held up a hand as Cassian started to protest. I'm not suggesting she actually do it. I'm saying we make sure Silas knows she could. Add it to the psychological pressure. Everything is a weapon, Elena murmured, understanding, even the threat of my agency. Exactly. Cassian's hand found hers, squeezed gently. Which is why we spend the next 3 nights making you impossible to dismiss. You need to know our laws better than they do. You need to speak with authority about the accord. You need to make every vampire at that contest understand that you're not a prize to be won. You're a person who chose, and that choice has power. Can you teach me that in 3 nights? His smile was small but genuine. I once negotiated a peace treaty in 2 nights with only a dictionary and a bottle of whiskey. 3 nights to make you formidable? Consider it done. Marcus closed the tome with a heavy thud. Then we begin immediately. Lysandra, you'll teach her the formal modes of address and house hierarchy. Adrian, you'll brief her on the political landscape. Who owes what to whom, which houses are neutral, which are hostile. Cassian, he paused, something almost paternal in his expression. You teach her what it means to stand beside House Thorn. Not behind it. Beside it? And me? Elena asked. What's my role? Learn fast, all 4 vampires said in unison. Despite everything, the danger, the impossible odds, the looming contest, Elena felt herself smile. I can do that. Cassian's hand tightened on hers. I know you can. But Elena? His voice dropped, intimate despite the others in the room. Promise me one more thing. If this goes wrong, if I fall, you run. You take the escape route Marcus will show you, and you don't look back. She wanted to refuse, wanted to insist she'd never leave him. But the look in his eyes, the desperate, ancient fear of losing another person he'd allowed himself to care for, made her nod. I promise, she whispered. But you promise me something too. You fight like you believe we'll both survive this, because I refuse to be another ghost haunting your memory. His forehead touched hers, cool and solid and real. Deal. Chapter 8. Lessons in Darkness. The first night was protocol. Lysandra transformed from languid predator to exacting instructor, drilling Elena on the intricate hierarchy of vampire society until her head spun with titles and territories. House Corvus, founded 1689, claims the Northern Territories. Their sigil is the raven in flight. Their traditional greeting is, "Left hand over heart, head inclined but never bowed," Elena recited. They value strength above diplomacy and consider the feeding restrictions insulting. Good. And House Sable? Founded 1701 Eastern Territories. Sigil is the black rose. They bow fully but keep eye contact. Submission with dignity. They trade in blood debts and consider contracts sacred. Lysandra circled her like a cat examining prey. And if a House Sable vampire offers you wine? Accept with both hands, drink only after they do, and never finish the glass. It implies you're still thirsty, which they'll interpret as weak. Excellent. Lysandra's smile was genuinely approving. You're a quick study. Most humans take weeks to learn what you've absorbed in hours. I'm motivated. Elena flexed her fingers, trying to commit another dozen house names and customs to memory. How many will be there? At the contest? At minimum, 3 neutral houses must witness. Probably more. This kind of challenge hasn't happened in decades. They'll come like crows to a battlefield, hoping for political carrion. She poured 2 glasses of wine, handed one to Elena. The key is making them see you as a participant, not a prop. Every gesture matters. Every word carries weight. You must be perfect. No pressure, Elena muttered, but she took the wine gratefully. The second night was politics. Adrian spread documents across the library table. Letters, ledgers, contracts written in that same rust-red ink. House Corvus owes blood debts to House Sable, he explained, pointing to an elaborate signature. 3 lives to be called in before the century turns. House Thorn holds no debts, which makes us vulnerable. We have nothing to trade. Except reputation, Elena said, studying the papers. You've upheld the accord for 200 years. That has to count for something. In theory, Adrian's expression turned cynical. In practice, reputation is only as valuable as the power backing it. House Corvus has been growing their numbers, turning more vampires, building alliances with younger houses who don't remember the wars. They see the accord as chains, not protection. Then we remind them why the chains exist. Elena traced the dates on one contract. Before the accord, what was vampire society like? Adrian's humor faded. Chaos, hunting without restraint. Humans fleeing cities, forming militias, burning anyone suspected of being turned. We were being hunted to extinction, and we deserved it. The accord saved both our species, gave us rules, structure, a way to coexist without mutual destruction. He met her eyes. That's what you're fighting for, Elena, not just yourself. The framework that keeps monsters from being monstrous. She absorbed this, feeling the weight of it. Does Silas understand that? Silas understands power. The question is whether we can make the cost of taking it too high. He gathered the papers, which is why you'll recite these debt structures tomorrow. If you can demonstrate knowledge of house politics, if you can speak their language, they can't dismiss you as ignorant. The third night was Cassian's. He found her in the library as midnight approached, looking exhausted but determined. Come with me, he said softly. There's something you need to see. He led her through passages she'd never noticed, down stairs that seemed to descend far deeper than the house's foundation should allow. The air grew colder, heavier, until they emerged into a vast underground chamber carved from living rock. Elena's breath caught. The walls were covered in names. Thousands of them, etched in precise script, each followed by dates. Some recent, some centuries old. It took her a moment to understand what she was seeing. Every human who's ever accepted sanctuary with a vampire house, Cassian said quietly. Going back to the first accord, we keep the record here, all of us, as a reminder of what we're protecting. Elena moved closer, running her fingers over the carved stone. There are so many. There were more before the wars, before houses started forgetting that humans are people, not resources. He guided her to a section dated 1803. Here, Margaret Fletcher, granted sanctuary August 15th, 1803, died defending House Thorn September 2nd, 1803. His voice cracked slightly. 18 days. That's all I could give her. Elena's hand found his. You gave her choice. That's more than she had before, is it? He turned to face her, and his eyes were haunted. "I have had 3 nights to teach you to survive in a world that wants to destroy you. 3 nights to prepare you for violence you shouldn't have to face. Margaret thought she could negotiate peace, and I let her believe it because I was young enough, foolish enough, to think love could overcome politics." His hand cupped her face. "I won't make that mistake with you." "Then don't." Elena leaned into his touch. "Don't love me carefully. Don't hold back because you're afraid of loss. If tomorrow is all we have, it won't be." The words were fierce, almost desperate. "I won't lose you, Elena. I can't." She rose on her toes, closing the distance between them until their foreheads touched. "Then teach me the last lesson. Teach me what it means to stand beside House Thorn." Cassian's breath, unnecessary but instinctive, shuddered out. "It means trust. Complete, absolute trust. When we're at Blackwood Crossing, when violence begins, you have to trust that I'll protect you, that Marcus and Lysandra and Adrian will die before they let House Corvus touch you. Can you do that?" "Yes, no hesitation." "Can you trust that I won't run? That I'll stand exactly where you need me, even when every instinct screams to hide?" His answer was to kiss her. It was gentle at first, careful, questioning. Then Elena's hands fisted in his coat, pulling him closer, and the gentleness shattered. His cool mouth moved against hers with 2 centuries of loneliness and 3 nights of fear and something that tasted like hope. She kissed him back with all the defiance and rage and desperate courage that had brought her to this impossible moment. When they finally broke apart, both were shaking. "That," Cassian said, voice rough, "was unwise." "Probably." Elena's smile was fierce. "Do it again anyway," he did. And in the chamber of carved names, surrounded by the ghosts of every human who'd chosen to stand beside monsters, Elena understood what she'd truly agreed to. Not just protection, not just sanctuary, partnership, in every sense of the word. They stayed in the underground chamber until dawn crept close, talking in whispers about everything and nothing. He told her about the world before electricity, before engines, when vampires had truly ruled the darkness. She told him about her father's bookshop, about learning to read by candlelight, about the small rebellions that had shaped her into someone who wouldn't bow. As the sun neared the horizon, Cassian grew quieter, his movements slower. "The day death approaching? Will it hurt?" she asked. "Tomorrow, tonight, when you fight?" "Probably." He managed a wry smile. "Vampire healing is fast, but not instantaneous. If Silas manages to stake me, or remove my head, or burn me with silver..." He saw her expression and softened. "I've survived worse, Elena. I survived the turning. I survived losing everyone I ever loved. I'll survive this. Promise me." "I promise to do everything in my power to come back to you." He kissed her forehead gently. "Now go. Rest. Tonight everything changes." Elena climbed the stairs alone, her heart full of terror and determination in equal measure. In her room, she found a package on her bed. A dress of midnight blue, simple but elegant, with silver embroidery at the collar and cuffs. A note in Cassian's handwriting read, "For tonight. Wear House Thorn's colors. Stand proud." She held the dress against herself, looking in the mirror. The woman staring back was almost unrecognizable from the one who'd arrived at Ravenswood months ago, bruised and broken. This woman had steel in her spine, fire in her eyes. This woman would not bow. As sunset approached on the 3rd night, Elena dressed carefully. The gown fit perfectly, and when she looked in the mirror, she saw what Cassian must have seen, someone who belonged in his world. Someone worth fighting for. Downstairs, House Thorn waited. Cassian stood at the center, magnificent in black and silver. Marcus and Adrian flanked him, armed and ready. Lysandra wore crimson, her smile all teeth. "Ready?" Cassian asked, offering his hand. Elena took it, feeling the cool strength of him. "Ready." Together they walked toward the carriages that would carry them to Blackwood Crossing, to the contest, to war. Chapter 9. The contest of blood and Will Blackwood Crossing was a ruin. Once it might have been a fortress. Elena could see the remnants of walls, the skeletal outline of towers against the night sky. Now it was a monument to decay, reclaimed by forest and time. But tonight it lived again. Torches burned in ancient sconces. Figures moved through the shadows, too graceful to be human. The neutral ground. "Stay close," Cassian murmured as their carriage rolled to a stop. "Don't speak unless spoken to directly." And Elena, his hand tightened on hers. "Remember everything we taught you?" She nodded, throat too tight for words. Through the carriage window, she could see them gathering, vampires from houses she'd studied, their sigils displayed on banners that snapped in the cold wind. House Sable's Black Rose, House Mordane's Crossed Keys, House Vesper's Silver Moon, and there, dominating the northern edge of the clearing, House Corvus's Raven, blood red against black fabric. 12 witnesses, Adrian reported from his position by the door, more than expected. Word spread fast. Good. Lyssandra's smile was sharp. Let them all watch House Corvus break itself against the old laws. Marcus said nothing, but his hand rested on the sword at his hip, a blade Elena had learned was forged from silver blessed by a long-dead Pope, vampire killer. She wondered how many times it had tasted blood. The carriage door opened. Cassian stepped out first, every inch the ancient lord, power radiating from him like heat from a forge. Then he turned, offering his hand to Elena. This was it. The moment she became visible, became real in the eyes of vampire society. She took his hand and stepped into the firelight. The reaction was immediate. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. She felt the weight of their stares, curious, calculating, hungry. Some looked at her like she was a puzzle to solve. Others looked at her like prey. Cassian's hand never left hers as they crossed the clearing toward the center, where a raised platform of ancient stone waited. House Thorn took their position on the southern edge. House Corvus, led by Silas, claimed the north. An older vampire stepped onto the platform, gray-haired, wearing robes that spoke of ceremony and age. "I am Octavian, of House Mordane, eldest present and keeper of the Accord. We gather tonight under the rite of contest, invoked by House Corvus against House Thorn. Let all present witness. The rules of the old ways govern this space. Treachery will be met with sanction. Honor will be rewarded. Let the challenge be stated." Silas moved forward, his red eyes gleaming. House Corvus challenges House Thorn's claim to the border territories, specifically the Ravenswood estate and surrounding lands. Furthermore, we challenge their protection of the human Elena Ashford, claiming said protection was granted through coercion and false pretense. Murmurs rippled through the gathered vampires. Elena felt her pulse hammer but kept her expression neutral, the way Lysandra had taught her. "Lord Thorn," Octavian said. "How do you answer?" Cassian's voice carried across the clearing, cold and absolute. House Thorn upholds its claim to Ravenswood by right of continuous stewardship for 200 years. As for Elena Ashford, her protection was granted by her free will, witnessed by my sworn house members, in accordance with Article 7 of the Accord. I challenge House Corvus to provide evidence of coercion or withdraw their claim. Evidence? Silas laughed. Look at her. A mortal woman, alone, vulnerable. What choice did she truly have? Accept your protection or face whatever drove her to your door in the first place. That's not free will. That's manipulation. That's survival, Elena heard herself say. Every eye turned to her. Cassian's hand tightened on hers. Warning or support, she wasn't sure. But she'd already committed. Octavian's eyebrows rose. The human speaks. This is unusual, but permitted. Continue, Miss Ashford. Elena stepped forward, and Cassian let her, though she felt his reluctance. I came to Ravenswood Estate fleeing violence from a mortal man. Lord Thorn offered me employment, not protection. That came later when I asked for it. When I learned what he was and chose to stay, free will doesn't mean choosing between good options. It means having the power to choose at all. Lord Thorn gave me that power. House Corvus wants to take it away. The silence that followed felt like standing on the edge of a blade. Then Silas smiled. Pretty words, but words are wind. You're human. You don't understand the weight of the oaths you've bound yourself to. You can't possibly comprehend what it means to be claimed by House Thorn. Then educate me, Elena challenged. Here, now, in front of all these witnesses. Explain to me what I don't understand about my own choices. Silas's smile faltered. Around the clearing, Elena saw subtle shifts. Vampires leaning forward, interested now. She'd done it. Made this about more than territory. Made it about the fundamental question. Did humans have agency in vampire law, or were they just sophisticated property? "This is absurd," Silas said, looking to Octavian. "We didn't come here to debate philosophy with livestock." "Careful." Marcus's voice was soft, deadly. "That word, livestock, that's not in the Accord. In fact, Article 7 specifically forbids referring to protected humans as anything but honored guests or sworn companions. Would you like me to recite the relevant passages?" A vampire in House Sable colors laughed, quickly stifled, but the damage was done. Silas had made an error, a small one, but visible. "The contest stands," Octavian declared. "But the terms have evolved. This is no longer simply about territory. This is about the interpretation of protection law. Therefore, I invoke Article 12, Trial by Champion. Each house will select one warrior. They will fight until yield or final death. The winner's house claims both territory and jurisdiction over the disputed human." "Agreed," Cassian said immediately. Silas hesitated, just a fraction, but Elena saw it. He'd expected a straightforward fight. Now it was a trial, with political implications. "Agreed," he said finally. "Champions, step forward." Cassian released Elena's hand, but not before bringing it to his lips, a gesture of promise. Then he moved to the platform, and the torchlight turned his face into something both beautiful and terrifying. From House Corvus, a figure emerged. Not Silas, but someone Elena hadn't noticed before. A woman, dark-haired and coldly lovely, with scars crossing her face that should have healed but hadn't. Silver scars. "Battle scars. Morgana," Lysandra breathed. "He brought Morgana." "Who?" Elena started. "House Corvus's executioner," Adrian said grimly. "She's 300 years old and has never lost a formal challenge." Elena's blood turned to ice. She looked at Cassian, saw the recognition in his face, the grim acceptance. He'd known this was possible, prepared for it, but had he prepared enough? The two champions faced each other on the platform. Octavian raised his hands. "The old laws govern this combat. Silver and stake are permitted. Fire and sunlight are not. The fight ends with yield or true death. Begin." Morgana moved before the word finished, blindingly fast. Her blade, silver gleaming, swept toward Cassian's throat. He blocked, his own sword materializing from somewhere within his coat, and the sound of metal on metal rang across the clearing. They moved like lightning, like poetry, like violence given form. Elena had seen Cassian move with supernatural speed before, but this was different. This was two apex predators trying to kill each other, and the beauty of it was horrifying. Blood sprayed, Cassian's, from a cut along his shoulder. He didn't slow, driving Morgana back with a series of strikes that would have killed Immortal 10 times over. She twisted, inhumanly flexible, and her blade found his side. Elena bit back a scream. Beside her, Marcus was rigid, watching with military precision. "He's testing her," he murmured, learning her patterns. "He's bleeding," Elena countered. "That's part of the test." The fight escalated. Morgana's blade moved in patterns that seemed impossible, silver flashing in the torchlight. Cassian matched her, but Elena could see the wounds accumulating, shallow cuts that would have killed a human through blood loss alone. Then Morgana made her move. A feint, a spin, and her blade drove toward Cassian's heart. The killing blow, the one that would end him permanently. Time seemed to slow. Elena saw it happening, saw Cassian realize a fraction too late, saw the blade descending, and without thinking, without planning, she screamed, "I invoke Article 23!" The blade stopped. Inches from Cassian's chest, Morgana froze, confusion crossing her scarred face. Octavian's voice cracked like thunder. "What?" Elena stepped onto the platform, her legs shaking but her voice steady. Article 23 of the Accord. If a protected human believes their champion is fighting dishonorably, they can call for single combat themselves. I invoke that right. I challenge Morgana directly. The clearing erupted in chaos. Chapter 10. The Choice Between Worlds. Cassian's voice cut through the chaos, raw with fury and fear. Absolutely not. I forbid it. Elena kept her eyes on Octavian, her heart threatening to break through her ribs. Article 23 doesn't require the champion's permission, only the invocation of the protected human and acceptance by neutral witnesses. Octavian's ancient face was unreadable. Around the clearing, vampires surged forward, arguing, debating. This was unprecedented. Insane. A human challenging a vampire to single combat was suicide dressed as bravery. But Elena had seen the blade descending toward Cassian's heart, had seen 3 nights of preparation about to end in ash and grief, and she'd remembered Adrian's words, "Everything is a weapon. Even the threat of your agency. The human cannot seriously expect," Silas started. "The human invoked a legitimate article of the Accord," interrupted a voice from House Sable's contingent, one that predates even the 1723 treaty. It was included specifically to prevent champions from being sacrificed in political games. If the protected human believes their champion is being murdered rather than fighting fairly, they have the right to take their fate into their own hands. "She'll die," Morgana said flatly, her blade still hovering near Cassian's chest. "In seconds. This is madness." "Then yield," Elena said, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. "Acknowledge that Cassian was fighting honorably, that there's no dishonor in House Thorn's protection of me. Withdraw the challenge." Understanding rippled through the gathered vampires. This wasn't about Elena actually fighting. It was about forcing House Corvus to choose. Kill a human in front of 12 witnesses and prove they saw humans as disposable, or yield and admit House Thorn's protection was legitimate. Silas's face contorted with rage. "This is a manipulation of the law." "This is the law," Octavian said quietly. "Article 23 stands. The question is whether House Corvus will honor it." He turned to Elena, and his ancient eyes held something like respect. "Miss Ashford, do you understand what you've invoked? If Morgana accepts, you will face her in single combat. No weapons, no assistance. To yield or death." "I understand." Elena's voice didn't shake. Behind her she felt Cassian's presence like a physical force, could sense his desperation, his fury at her for risking herself. But she also felt House Thorn, Marcus, Adrian, Lysandra standing with her, believing in her, trusting that she knew what she was doing, even if she was terrified. Morgana looked to Silas, waiting for orders. The House Corvus Lord's face was a mask of calculation. If he ordered Morgana to fight, House Corvus would be seen as needlessly cruel, killing a human who'd invoked ancient protections. If he withdrew, they looked weak. "There's a third option," Cassian said, his voice deadly calm. He stepped away from Morgana's blade, moving to Elena's side. "According to Article 23, if both champion and protected human agree, they can fight together against the opposing champion. 2 against 1. That's not," Silas started. "It's in the original text," Marcus called out, written in Old French. Most modern translations omit it, but the language is clear. The protected human and their champion may fight as one if both consent. Elena turned to Cassian, saw the question in his eyes, the fear, the desperate hope. "Together?" she whispered. "Together." His hand found hers. "But Elena, you have to trust me completely. Do exactly as I say when I say it. Can you do that?" "Yes," Octavian raised his hands for silence. "House Thorn invokes the paired combat provision. Does House Corvus accept these terms, or do they yield?" The silence stretched impossibly long. Then Silas smiled, cold and cruel. "We accept. Let them die together. It will make the point even clearer." Morgana's blade rose. "Stay behind me," Cassian murmured. "When I move left, you move right. When I drop, you run to Marcus. Understand? I'm not running. You will if I tell you to. That's the trust you promised." His eyes met hers, fierce and ancient. "I will not lose you, Elena. Not tonight. Not ever." Then the fight began. Morgana came at them like a storm, her silver blade carving the air. Cassian met her head-on, his own sword singing as it blocked strike after strike. Elena circled right, staying out of range but watching, learning the rhythm of the combat. She wasn't here to fight. She was here to be the thing Morgana had to worry about. The unpredictable element, the human who shouldn't be on this battlefield but was anyway. Cassian drove Morgana back, their blades a blur. Blood sprayed, his again from a cut across his cheek. But he was smiling now, savage and free. "You're slowing, Morgana. 300 years, and you've forgotten what it's like to protect something other than your own pride. And you've forgotten," Morgana snarled, "that love makes you weak." She fainted high, then swept low. Her blade aimed not at Cassian but at Elena. Time crystallized. Elena saw death coming, silver and sharp. Saw Cassian realize, saw him move, too far away, too slow. But Marcus wasn't. He appeared from nowhere, his own blade intercepting Morgana's with a sound like breaking bells. "Attacking the protected human directly," he said, his deep voice carrying across the suddenly silent clearing, "is explicitly forbidden. You just violated the accord." In front of 12 witnesses, Morgana's eyes widened. She'd been so focused on provocation, on trying to make Cassian break formation, that she'd crossed the line herself. "Foul," Octavian declared, his voice ringing with finality. "House Corvus has violated the terms of contest. House Thorn wins by default. The territory stands. The protection stands. And House Corvus," his gaze swept to Silas, "you will answer to a council of houses for this breach." "No." Silas's voice was poisonous. "This was a setup. You all conspired." "We invoked the law," Elena said, stepping forward. Every vampire in the clearing turned to look at her. "The law you claimed to uphold while trying to break it. You wanted to prove humans are disposable? You proved the opposite. You proved that even facing death we have agency, we have choice, and we choose to stand with houses that honor that." Silas looked ready to attack anyway, rules be damned. But the other houses were moving now, forming a barrier between him and House Thorn. The witnesses had made their judgment. House Corvus had lost. "Withdraw," Octavian commanded. "Now, before you make this worse." For a long moment, Silas stared at Elena with pure hatred. Then he turned and stalked away, Morgana and the rest of House Corvus following like shadows. The clearing erupted in conversation. Vampires debating, arguing, marveling at what they'd just witnessed. But Elena heard none of it, because Cassian had pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "Never," he said, his voice shaking. "Never do that again. I saved your life. You risked yours." He pulled back just enough to look at her, and his eyes were wild. "You terrified me. You brilliant, reckless, impossible woman." "You're welcome," she managed, and then he was kissing her, fierce and desperate, in front of every vampire house present. When they finally broke apart, Lysandra was laughing. "Well, that certainly made a statement." "Statement," Adrian shook his head, grinning. "She just rewrote vampire-human relations in one night. There'll be songs about this." Marcus approached, his expression softer than Elena had ever seen. "You honored Margaret's memory tonight. You showed that humans aren't victims to be protected. They're partners to be respected." "Thank you." Octavian made his way to them, the other witnesses following. "Lord Thorn, Miss Ashford, what happened tonight? It will change things. Force conversations that many have been avoiding. Are you prepared for that?" Cassian's arm wrapped around Elena's waist, solid and sure. "We are." "Then go home." Octavian's ancient eyes held approval. "You've earned your peace. For now." They returned to Ravenswood as dawn approached. Elena curled against Cassian in the carriage, while the others talked strategy and politics around them. She was exhausted, running on nothing but adrenaline and the fierce joy of survival. "I have to sleep soon," Cassian murmured against her hair. "The sun—" "I know." She turned to look at him. "Will you be all right? The wounds will heal while I sleep. I promise." His thumb brushed her cheek. "But Elena, we need to talk. About what comes next. About what you want. Because tonight proved something important." "What?" "That you don't need my protection. You're strong enough to stand alone." His voice dropped. "Which means the choice is truly yours now. Stay with me, bound to House Thorn and everything that means. Or take the freedom you fought for and build a life without monsters." Elena pulled back to look at him fully. "You think I want to leave?" "I think you deserve the option. No coercion, no desperation, just choice." She considered this, looking out at the estate emerging from the darkness. Ravenswood, which had been a refuge and become a home, where she'd learned that monsters came in human form, and some of the most honorable beings she'd ever met drank blood and feared the sun. "I choose you," she said simply, "not because I'm afraid of the world out there, not because I need protection, but because you see me, because you trust me to be strong, because together, we're better than we are apart." Cassian's breath caught. "Elena." "But," she continued, "I'm not your protected human anymore. I'm your partner. Equal. If there are decisions to be made about House Thorn, I want a voice. If there are fights to be had, I stand beside you. No more keeping me safe by keeping me ignorant." His smile was slow, genuine, transforming his face. "Partner? I can live with that." "Good." She kissed him softly. "Now go sleep before the sun turns you to ash. I'll be here when you wake. Promise?" "Promise." She watched him disappear into his chambers as dawn broke, then climbed to her own room. The house settled into daylight, quiet, Mrs. Barrow humming in the kitchen, the normal sounds of morning. But nothing was normal anymore. And Elena found she preferred it that way. That night, when Cassian woke, he found her in the library, adding a name to his journals in careful script: Elena Ashford. Partner of House Thorn, chose her own fate. Together, they walked into their future. Mortal and immortal, human and vampire, bound not by protection, but by choice. And in the darkness between worlds, that choice blazed like starlight,